David stood frozen in the doorway, holding a birthday cake with pink candles that flickered in the dark. His hands shook so much that the cake almost fell to the floor. Through the bedroom window, he could see his wife, Grace, kissing another man. It was her birthday. He had left work early to surprise her. But now he was the one who got surprised. The man holding his wife was tall and wore a blue suit. David's heart felt like it stopped beating. He wanted to scream. He wanted to cry. But no sound came out of his mouth. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button to support our channel's growth. And drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Now let me take you back to where this all started. 3 months earlier, David was a simple man who worked at a small shop in the city. He sold phones and computers to people who needed them. Every morning, he woke up at 6 o'clock, made breakfast for Grace, and kissed her goodbye before leaving for work. Grace was a teacher at the local school. She taught children how to read and write. She had long black hair that reached her shoulders and a smile that could light up any room. David loved her more than anything in the world. They had been married for 5 years. They met at a friend's wedding when David accidentally spilled juice on Grace's white dress. She laughed instead of getting angry, and David knew right then that she was special. "I'm so sorry," David had said, his face red with shame. "It's okay," Grace had smiled. "Now I have a reason to remember this day." That was the beginning of their love story. The first strange sign. 3 months ago, something changed. David started noticing small things that felt wrong. Grace stopped eating dinner with him. She would come home late from school and say she had extra meetings. When David asked about her day, she would give short answers and quickly walk away. "How was work today?" David would ask. "Fine," Grace would say, not looking at him. "Did anything interesting happen?" David would try again. "No, nothing. I'm tired. I need to rest." Grace would reply before going to the bedroom and closing the door. David felt confused. His wife used to tell him everything. They would sit on the couch after dinner and talk for hours about their students, their dreams, and their plans for the future. But now Grace barely looked at him. Then came the phone calls. One evening, David came home early because the shop closed for a holiday. He walked into the house and heard Grace's voice coming from the bedroom. She was laughing. David's heart felt warm. He hadn't heard Grace laugh like that in weeks. He walked quietly toward the bedroom, wanting to surprise her. "I can't wait to see you again," Grace said in a soft, happy voice. David stopped walking. Who was she talking to? "No, he doesn't know anything," Grace continued. "He's too busy with work to notice." David's stomach felt sick. His hands started shaking. He wanted to push the door open and ask Grace what was happening, but fear kept him frozen in place. "I miss you too," Grace whispered. "Tomorrow, same place. I'll be there." David heard the phone click off. He quickly and quietly walked back to the front door. He opened it, then closed it loudly. "Grace, I'm home," he called out, pretending he just arrived. Grace came out of the bedroom with a big smile on her face. "Oh, you're home early," she said. "Yes, the shop closed for the holiday," David said, watching her carefully. "That's nice," Grace said. But she didn't hug him like she used to. She just smiled and went to the kitchen. That night, David couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling while Grace slept peacefully beside him. Questions filled his mind like dark clouds before a storm. Who was Grace talking to? Where was she going tomorrow? Why did she say he didn't know anything? The next day, David did something he never thought he would do. He lied to Grace. "I have to go to work early today," David said at breakfast. "Okay," Grace said, not looking up from her phone. David left the house, but he didn't go to work. Instead, he parked his car down the street where he could see their house but Grace couldn't see him. He waited. At 9 o'clock, Grace came out of the house. She wore a pretty red dress that David had never seen before. She looked around nervously, then got into her car and drove away. David's hands gripped the steering wheel so tight that his knuckles turned white. He started his car and followed her from a safe distance. Grace drove for 20 minutes until she reached a fancy restaurant on the other side of town. David parked far away and watched as Grace got out of her car. Then David saw him. A tall man in a blue suit walked up to Grace. He was handsome, with neat hair and an expensive watch on his wrist. The man smiled at Grace and she smiled back. Then the man did something that made David's heart break into a million pieces. He hugged Grace. Not a friendly hug. A long, tight hug like lovers do. David felt like he couldn't breathe. He wanted to jump out of the car and run to them. He wanted to scream and ask Grace why she was doing this. But his body wouldn't move. Grace and the man walked into the restaurant together. The man's hand was on Grace's back. David sat in his car for 2 hours. He couldn't stop shaking. Tears rolled down his face, but he didn't wipe them away. When Grace finally came out of the restaurant, she was holding the man's hand. They stood by her car and talked for a long time. Then the man leaned down and kissed Grace on the cheek. Grace touched the spot where he kissed her and smiled. Then she got into her car and drove away. David couldn't drive. His hands were shaking too much. He sat in his car and cried like a child. That night, David acted like nothing was wrong. He came home from work and asked Grace about her day. "It was normal," Grace said with a straight face. "Just teaching and grading papers." She was lying to him. David knew she was lying, but he said nothing. Over the next few weeks, David watched Grace more carefully. He noticed that she always checked her phone and smiled at secret messages. She came home late 3 times a week, always with a new excuse. "I had to help a student after school," she would say. Or the principal needed to talk to all the teachers about something important. Each lie cut David like a sharp knife. But he stayed quiet. He was planning something. David decided he wouldn't just catch Grace cheating. He would do it in a way that she would never forget. He would wait for the perfect moment. And he knew exactly when that moment would be. Grace's birthday was on a Saturday in June. For weeks, she had been excited about it. "I can't wait for my birthday," Grace would say. "It's going to be so special." David would nod and smile, even though his heart was breaking. "Yes, it will be very special," he would say. He knew what Grace was planning. She thought David didn't know. But he had seen the messages on her phone when she left it on the table one day. Grace was going to spend her birthday with the other man. She had told David that she wanted to go to the beach with her girlfriends for her birthday. "It's just a girl's day," Grace had said. "We'll be back tomorrow." But David knew the truth. There were no girlfriends. Just Grace and the man in the blue suit. "That sounds fun," David had said, pretending to believe her. "I'll plan a small party for you when you come back." Grace had smiled and kissed his cheek. "You're so sweet," she had said. Those words felt like poison to David. How could she kiss him and lie to him at the same time? The morning of Grace's birthday. The morning of Grace's birthday arrived. David woke up early and made Grace her favorite breakfast: eggs, toast, and orange juice. "Happy birthday," David said with a smile when Grace came to the kitchen. "Thank you," Grace said, giving him a quick hug. They ate breakfast together, but David barely tasted his food. His mind was focused on what would happen later. After breakfast, Grace went to the bedroom to pack her bag. David watched her put her clothes and makeup into a small suitcase. "What time are your friends picking you up?" David asked. "Around noon," Grace said. "We want to get to the beach before it gets too crowded." David nodded. "Have fun. I'll miss you." "I'll miss you too," Grace said. But her eyes were looking at her phone, not at David. At noon, a car pulled up outside their house. It wasn't Grace's friends. It was the man in the blue suit. Grace grabbed her bag and kissed David quickly on the lips. "See you tomorrow," she said. "See you tomorrow," David repeated. He watched from the window as Grace got into the man's car. They drove away together, laughing and smiling. David stood at the window for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and made a call. "Hello?" A woman's voice answered. "Mrs. Johnson?" David said. "This is David, Grace's husband. We need to talk." Mrs. Johnson's surprise. Mrs. Johnson was the principal of the school where Grace worked. She was a kind woman who had known both David and Grace for years. "David?" Mrs. Johnson sounded surprised. Is everything okay? I need to ask you something important, David said. Did Grace have any meetings after school in the last 3 months? There was a long silence. No, Mrs. Johnson finally said. We haven't had any extra meetings. Why do you ask? David's stomach felt like it had a rock in it. And did Grace ask for any time off today? Yes, Mrs. Johnson said. She said she needed the day off for a family emergency. She said your mother was sick. David closed his eyes. His mother had died 5 years ago. Grace knew that. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson, David said quietly. David, what's going on? Mrs. Johnson asked, her voice full of worry. I'll tell you later, David said. I have to go now. He hung up the phone and sat down on the couch. His whole body felt heavy. Grace had lied to everyone. To him, to her boss, to everyone who trusted her. But David wasn't going to cry anymore. He had already cried too much. Now it was time for action. Following Grace again, David got into his car and drove. He knew where Grace and the man were going. 3 days ago, he had checked Grace's phone while she was sleeping. He saw messages between Grace and the man, whose name was Marcus. Marcus had sent Grace the address of a beach house. See you on your birthday, the message said. I've got a special surprise for you. David had written down the address. Now he was driving to that beach house. Took him 2 hours to get there. The beach house was beautiful. White walls, big windows, and a view of the ocean. Marcus must be rich, David thought. David parked his car far away where Grace and Marcus wouldn't see it. He walked carefully toward the house. Through the window, he could see Grace and Marcus inside. They were dancing in the living room. Music was playing and they were laughing. David's hands formed into fists. He wanted to break the window and pull Grace away from Marcus. But he stopped himself. Not yet, he thought. I have to wait for the perfect moment. The perfect moment. David waited outside for 3 hours. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky orange and pink. Finally, he saw Marcus walk out of the house and get into his car. I'll be back in an hour, Marcus called to Grace through the window. I'm going to get the birthday cake. Okay. Grace called back. Drive safely. Marcus drove away. Grace was alone in the house now. This was David's chance. He walked up to the front door and knocked 3 times. His heart was beating so fast and so loud that he thought Grace might hear it from inside. The door opened. Grace stood there in a beautiful blue dress. When she saw David, her face turned white. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Hello, Grace, David said calmly. Happy birthday. Grace stepped back. Her hands started shaking. David? What are you doing here? She asked. I came to surprise you for your birthday, David said. Isn't that what husbands are supposed to do? Tears filled Grace's eyes. David, I can explain. Explain what? David interrupted. Explain why you lied about going to the beach with friends? Explain why you're here with another man? Explain why you've been cheating on me for months. Grace started crying. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. Sorry, David said. His voice was getting louder. You're sorry? Do you know how much you hurt me? I followed you, Grace. I saw you with him. I saw you holding his hand. I saw you smiling at him the way you used to smile at me. Grace fell to her knees. She was crying so hard that her whole body was shaking. Please forgive me, she begged. Please, David. I made a terrible mistake. David looked down at his wife, the woman he had loved for 7 years, the woman he had trusted with his whole heart, the woman who had broken him into pieces. Who is he? David asked. Who is Marcus? Grace looked up at David with red, wet eyes. He's a man I met at a teacher's conference 3 months ago, she said quietly. Do you love him? David asked. The question hurt him to ask. Grace didn't answer right away. That silence told David everything he needed to know. I don't know, Grace finally said. I'm confused. Confused, David said. You're confused? I'm your husband, Grace. We promised to love each other forever. We stood in front of our families and friends and made vows. And you threw it all away because you're confused? Grace reached out to touch David's hand, but he pulled away. Don't touch me, he said. Just then, they heard a car engine. David turned and looked out the window. Marcus was back. Marcus got out of his car holding a big birthday cake. He was smiling, completely unaware of what was happening inside the house. David looked at Grace. Then he looked at Marcus walking toward the door. Let's see how confused you really are, David said. He opened the front door wide just as Marcus reached it. Marcus stopped walking. His smile disappeared. The birthday cake in his hands started to shake. Hello, Marcus, David said. I'm David, Grace's husband. Marcus looked at David, then at Grace, who was still on her knees crying. Oh my God, Marcus whispered. Grace told me so much about you, David said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were full of anger. Well, she didn't tell me your name, but I figured that out on my own. Do you know she's married, Marcus? Marcus's face turned red. Yes, You knew, David said. You knew she had a husband, and you still chose to be with her. Marcus put the cake down on the ground. Look, man, I'm sorry. You're sorry, David said. Everyone is sorry, but sorry doesn't fix anything, does it? David walked past Marcus and stopped at the car. He looked inside and saw gift bags on the back seat. Birthday gifts, David asked. Marcus didn't answer. David opened the car door and took out the gift bags. There were 3 of them. He opened the first one. Inside was an expensive gold necklace. Nice, David said. He opened the second bag. It had perfume that cost more than David made in a week. The third bag had something that made David's blood boil. It was a ring. Not just any ring. An engagement ring. David turned to Marcus. Were you going to ask my wife to marry you? He asked. Marcus didn't answer. He just looked at the ground. David laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had lost everything. This is unbelievable, he said. Grace was still crying on the floor. David, please, she started to say, but David held up his hand to stop her. I don't want to hear it, Grace, he said. He threw the ring box at Marcus's feet. Keep your ring, David said. And keep Grace too. I'm done. David started walking back to his car. Each step felt heavy. David, wait, Grace screamed. She ran after him. Please don't leave. We can fix this. I love you. David stopped walking. He turned around slowly and looked at Grace. If you loved me, he said quietly, you never would have done this. Then David did something that shocked even himself. He pulled out his phone and held it up. Say cheese, he said. Grace's eyes went wide. What are you doing? She asked. Making sure everyone knows the truth, David said. He started taking pictures of Grace in her fancy dress standing outside the beach house. He took pictures of Marcus with his expensive gifts. He took pictures of everything. David, no! Grace screamed. Please don't do this. But David didn't stop. He took one last picture, a close-up of the engagement ring still in its box on the ground. Goodbye, Grace, David said. Happy birthday. He got into his car and drove away. In his rearview mirror, he could see Grace falling to her knees again, crying. Marcus was standing there looking lost and confused. David kept driving. He didn't look back again. The drive home. David drove for an hour before he finally pulled over to the side of the road. His hands were shaking again. His eyes were full of tears. He had finally done it. He had confronted Grace. He had caught her red-handed. He had proven that she was a cheater and a liar. So why did he feel so terrible? David put his head on the steering wheel and cried. He cried for the 5 years of marriage that were now destroyed. He cried for all the lies Grace had told him. He cried for the future they would never have together. After a while, there were no more tears left. David sat up and wiped his face. He looked at his phone. Grace had called him 15 times. She had sent him 20 messages. David didn't read them. He didn't want to. Instead, he scrolled through his photo gallery. He looked at pictures of him and Grace from happier times. Their wedding day. Their first anniversary. the vacation they took to the mountains last year. Grace was smiling in every picture. She looked so happy. Was she pretending even then? Or did something change? David's phone rang. It was Grace calling again. This time David answered. David! Grace's voice was broken and weak. David, please come back. We need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, David said. Yes, there is. Grace cried. I made a mistake. A huge, terrible mistake. But I love you, David. I love you so much. Please give me another chance. David closed his eyes. You should have thought about that before you cheated on me, he said. I know, Grace said. I know I messed up. But everyone makes mistakes, David. I'm begging you. Please forgive me. Some mistakes can't be forgiven, David said. Then he hung up. He turned off his phone so Grace couldn't call again. Then he started driving home. But David wasn't driving toward the home he shared with Grace. He was driving to his friend James's house. James had been David's best friend since they were kids. If anyone would understand, it would be James. James's house. David knocked on James's door at 8 o'clock that night. James answered, looking surprised. David, James said. What are you doing here? Are you okay? You look terrible. Can I stay here tonight? David asked. I can't go home. Of course, James said immediately. He pulled David inside. What happened? David sat down on James's couch and told him everything. He told him about Grace's strange behavior 3 months ago. He told him about the secret phone calls and the lies. He told him about following Grace and discovering Marcus. And he told him about what happened at the beach house. James listened to the whole story without saying a word. When David finished talking, James looked angry. I can't believe Grace would do that, James said. I've known her almost as long as you have. She always seemed so honest. I thought so too, David said. But I guess we never really know people as well as we think we do. James got up and went to the kitchen. He came back with 2 cold sodas. So what are you going to do now? He asked. David took a sip of his soda. I don't know, he said. I just know I can't be with Grace anymore. She destroyed everything. Are you going to divorce her? James asked. The word divorce made David's chest hurt. Divorce meant it was really over. Divorce meant their marriage was dead. But Grace had already killed their marriage when she chose to be with Marcus. Yes, David said. I'm going to divorce her. James nodded. I'm sorry, man, he said. This is really messed up. Yeah, David agreed. It really is. That night, David slept on James's couch. But he didn't really sleep. He just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling and thinking about everything that had happened. Tomorrow he would have to face reality. Tomorrow he would have to figure out what to do with the rest of his life. But tonight, he just wanted to close his eyes and pretend that none of this was real. The next morning, when David woke up, sunlight was streaming through James's living room window. For a brief moment, David forgot where he was. Then everything came rushing back. Grace, Marcus, the beach house, the betrayal. David sat up and rubbed his face. His whole body hurt from sleeping on the couch. But his body pain was nothing compared to the pain in his heart. James walked into the living room carrying 2 cups of coffee. Morning, he said. How are you feeling? Like my life just ended, David said honestly. James handed him a cup of coffee. I know it feels that way now, he said. But you'll get through this. You're strong, David. David wasn't sure he believed that. He didn't feel strong. He felt broken. His phone was still turned off. David was afraid to turn it back on. He knew Grace had probably called and texted him 100 more times. But he couldn't hide forever. David took a deep breath and turned his phone on. Immediately, it started buzzing with notifications. 47 missed calls from Grace. 63 text messages. And 5 voicemails. David's hands shook as he opened the voicemails. The first one was from last night. David, please answer the phone, Grace's voice said. She was crying so hard that David could barely understand her. I'm so sorry. Please come back. I need to talk to you. I love you. The second voicemail was similar. And the third. and the fourth. But the fifth voicemail was different. Grace's voice wasn't crying anymore. It was cold, angry. "Fine, David," Grace said. "If you want to be like this, then fine. I tried to apologize. I tried to make things right. But you won't even give me a chance. You know what? Maybe Marcus is right. Maybe I deserve someone better than you. Someone who actually pays attention to me. You were always so busy with work that you never had time for me. So don't act like you're the only victim here." The voicemail ended. David stared at his phone in disbelief. Grace was trying to blame him? She was the one who cheated, and now she was saying it was his fault? "Unbelievable," David whispered. "What is it?" James asked. David handed James the phone so he could listen to the last voicemail. James's face got redder and redder as he listened. "Are you kidding me?" James said when the voicemail ended. "She's actually trying to make you feel bad? After what she did?" David took his phone back. "I guess that's how cheaters think," he said. "They can't accept that they did something wrong, so they try to blame everyone else." David deleted all of Grace's messages without reading them. He deleted all the voicemails. He was done listening to her lies. "So what now?" James asked. David thought for a moment. Then he stood up. "Now," David said, "I go home and pack Grace's things. She's not welcome in my house anymore." "Do you want me to come with you?" James offered. "In case she's there?" David nodded. "Yeah," he said. "That would be good." David and James drove to David's house together. When they pulled up, David saw Grace's car in the driveway. She was home. David's heart started beating faster. He didn't want to see her. He didn't want to hear more of her excuses and lies. But this was his house. He had bought it with his own money before he even met Grace. She had no right to be there anymore. David and James got out of the car and walked to the front door. David took out his keys, but before he could unlock the door, it swung open. Grace stood there. Her eyes were red from crying. Her hair was messy. She looked like she hadn't slept all night. "David," she said. Her voice was shaky. "You came back." "I came to get you out of my house," David said. His voice was hard and cold. Grace's face crumbled. "David, please." "No," David interrupted. "No more talking. No more excuses. You need to pack your things and leave." "This is my home too," Grace cried. "No, it's not," David said. "This house was mine before we got married. My name is the only one on the deed. You have no legal right to be here." Tears rolled down Grace's cheeks. "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked. "I don't care," David said. And in that moment he really didn't. "Go to Marcus's house. Or go to your mother's. Just get out." Grace looked at James as if hoping he would help her. But James just stared back at her with a disappointed look on his face. "Fine," Grace finally said. Her voice was bitter. "I'll leave. But you're going to regret this, David. One day, you're going to realize what you lost. And I won't be there anymore." David said nothing. He just stepped aside so Grace could walk past him. Grace went upstairs to the bedroom. David and James could hear her opening drawers and throwing things into bags. After 30 minutes, Grace came back downstairs with 2 big suitcases. Her face was wet with tears, but she didn't say anything to David. She walked out the door, put her suitcases in her car, and drove away. David watched her go. When her car disappeared around the corner, he closed the front door. "You okay?" James asked. "I will be," David said, though he wasn't sure if that was true. But this was just the beginning of David's nightmare. What David didn't know was that Grace and Marcus had a secret plan, a plan that would change everything. And when David discovered the truth about what was really going on, his whole world would flip upside down in a way he never expected. Remember to subscribe to this channel to support our growth. 3 days had passed since Grace left the house. David tried to go back to his normal life, but everything felt different now. The house was too quiet without Grace there. Every room reminded him of her. David went back to work at the phone shop. His coworkers asked him where he had been, and David lied. "I was sick," he said. He didn't want to tell them the truth, that his wife had cheated on him and broken his heart into a million pieces. At night, David couldn't sleep. He would lie in bed and think about Grace and Marcus. Were they together right now? Were they laughing about how stupid David was? The thoughts made him feel sick. On the fourth day after Grace left, something strange happened. David was at work when his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. Normally, David wouldn't answer calls from unknown numbers, but something told him to pick up this time. "Hello," David said. "Is this David?" A woman's voice asked. She sounded young and nervous. "Yes," David said. "Who is this?" There was a long pause. David could hear the woman breathing on the other end. "My name is Sarah," the woman finally said. "I'm Marcus's wife." David almost dropped his phone. Marcus was married? "What?" David said. His heart started beating very fast. "I found your number on my husband's phone," Sarah said. Her voice was shaking. "Next to a picture of you confronting him at a beach house. I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" David sat down in a chair. His legs felt weak. Marcus had a wife. Grace had been sleeping with a married man. "Yes," David said. "We need to talk." Meeting Sarah. An hour later, David met Sarah at a small coffee shop on the other side of town. He recognized her immediately when she walked in. Sarah was a pretty woman with short brown hair and sad eyes. She looked like she had been crying. Sarah sat down across from David. For a moment, neither of them said anything. They just looked at each other, two people who had been hurt by the same man. "How long have you known?" Sarah finally asked. "About 3 months," David said. "I caught my wife with your husband on her birthday." "How long have you known?" "I found out 2 days ago," Sarah said. Tears filled her eyes. "Marcus left his phone at home when he went to work. Kept buzzing, so I looked at it. I saw messages between him and a woman named Grace. They were talking about loving each other, about running away together." David's stomach twisted. "Running away together?" he repeated. Sarah nodded. She pulled out her phone and showed David screenshots of the messages. David read them, and with each word he felt more and more angry. "Marcus, I can't wait until we can be together forever. Grace, me too. I'm tired of hiding. I want to wake up next to you every morning. Marcus, soon, baby. Just a few more weeks. Once I get the money from the business deal, we'll leave this town and start fresh somewhere new. Grace, what about your wife? Marcus, don't worry about her. She doesn't need to know anything until we're gone." David felt like someone had punched him in the chest. Grace and Marcus were planning to run away together, and Marcus was just going to leave Sarah behind like she meant nothing? "I'm so sorry," David said to Sarah. "This is terrible." "There's more," Sarah said. She took a deep breath. "Marcus is planning to steal money from his company. He's been moving funds into a secret bank account for months. That's the business deal he was talking about in the messages. He's going to take the money and disappear with your wife." David couldn't believe what he was hearing. Not only was Marcus a cheater, but he was also a thief. "We have to stop them," David said. Sarah looked at him with hope in her eyes. "How?" she asked. David thought for a moment. His mind was racing with ideas. Then, slowly, a plan started to form. "First," David said, "we need to find out exactly when Marcus is planning to take the money and run. Then we need to figure out where they're planning to go. And then what?" Sarah asked. David looked at her with determination in his eyes. "And then we make sure they don't get away with it. The plan begins." Over the next few days, David and Sarah worked together. They became partners in a mission to expose Marcus and Grace before they could run away. Sarah still had access to Marcus's computer at home. When Marcus went to work, Sarah would search through his files and emails. She found documents that showed exactly how much money Marcus was planning to steal. $200,000. "That's a lot of money," David said when Sarah told him. "Marcus works for a big investment company," Sarah explained. "He has access to client accounts. He's been slowly moving small amounts of money over the past 6 months so nobody would notice. But next Friday he's planning to transfer all of it at once to his secret account. And then he and Grace are going to fly to Mexico. Mexico. That's where they were planning to start their new life together. David felt anger burning in his chest. How could Grace do this? How could she plan to run away with a man who was stealing money? Had David ever really known her at all? We have 9 days to stop them, Sarah said. What should we do? David had been thinking about this. He had a plan, but it was risky. We're going to let them think everything is going according to their plan, David said. We're going to let Marcus transfer the money. We're going to let them think they're going to get away with it. And then, at the very last moment, we're going to pull the rug out from under them. Sarah looked worried. But what if they actually escape? She asked. They won't, David said. Trust me. Watching and waiting. The next 9 days were the longest of David's life. He went to work every day and pretended everything was normal. But inside, his mind was always thinking about the plan. Sarah kept David updated on everything Marcus was doing. She told him that Marcus had bought 2 plane tickets to Mexico for next Saturday morning. She told him that Marcus had rented a small apartment in a town called Puerto Vallarta. He thinks he's so smart, Sarah said one day when she called David. He thinks nobody knows what he's doing. But I see everything. David also kept an eye on Grace. He drove past her mother's house where Grace was staying. He saw Grace come and go, always looking at her phone and smiling. She looked happy. That made David even more angry. Grace was happy because she thought she was going to run away with Marcus and live a perfect life in Mexico. She didn't care that she had destroyed David. She didn't care that Sarah would be left behind with nothing. But Grace's happiness wouldn't last long. David was going to make sure of that. On Thursday night, 2 days before Marcus and Grace were supposed to fly to Mexico, David got a call from Sarah. It's happening tomorrow, Sarah said. Her voice was shaking. Marcus just told me he has to go into the office early tomorrow morning for an emergency meeting. But I checked his computer. Tomorrow is when he's going to transfer the money. Okay, David said. His heart was pounding. Are you ready for this? Yes, Sarah said. I'm ready. Good, David said. Tomorrow we end this. Friday morning. Friday morning came. David woke up at 5 o'clock. He couldn't sleep anyway. Today was the day everything would change. David got dressed and drove to Sarah's house. She was waiting for him outside. She looked nervous but determined. Marcus left an hour ago, Sarah said as she got into David's car. He said he'd be home by lunchtime. That gives us a few hours. Where's Grace? David asked. According to the messages I saw on Marcus's phone, she's going to meet him at the airport tomorrow morning, Sarah said. She doesn't know about the money transfer happening today. Marcus wanted to keep that part secret from her. Interesting, David thought. So Marcus didn't even fully trust Grace. That would make things easier. David drove to Marcus's office building. It was a tall glass tower in the center of the city. They parked in the lot and waited. What do we do now? Sarah asked. David pulled out his phone. Now, he said. We make a call. He dialed a number he had found online. After 3 rings, someone answered. Financial Crimes Division. How can I help you? A man's voice said. Hello, David said. I'd like to report a crime in progress. Someone is stealing money from his company right now. David told the police officer everything. He told him about Marcus, about the secret bank account, and about the plan to flee to Mexico. Sarah provided all the evidence she had gathered, screenshots, bank account numbers, and dates. We'll send officers immediately, the police officer said. Stay where you are. David and Sarah waited in the car. 20 minutes later, 3 police cars pulled up to the office building. Officers in uniforms got out and walked inside. It's really happening, Sarah whispered. She grabbed David's hand. They're going to arrest him. David nodded. He felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction that Marcus was finally going to face consequences for what he did. But sadness because this meant his marriage to Grace was truly over. 30 minutes passed. Then the doors of the building opened. Marcus walked out in handcuffs. 2 police officers were holding his arms. Marcus looked shocked and confused. He kept trying to talk to the officers, but they weren't listening. They put him in the back of a police car and drove away. Sarah started crying. Not sad tears, tears of relief. "It's over," she said. "It's finally over." But David knew it wasn't over yet. Not completely. There was still one more person who needed to face the truth. Grace. Confronting Grace again. That afternoon, David drove to Grace's mother's house. His phone had been buzzing all day with calls and messages from Grace. She had heard about Marcus's arrest. "Grace. David, did you do this? Grace, please call me. We need to talk. Grace. How could you do this to me?" David didn't answer any of her messages. He wanted to see Grace in person. When he pulled up to the house, Grace was standing outside waiting for him. She looked angry. Her face was red, and her fists were clenched. David got out of his car slowly. He looked at Grace and felt nothing. No love, no anger, just emptiness. "You did this!" Grace screamed at him. "You got Marcus arrested." "No," David said calmly. "Marcus got himself arrested. He was stealing money, Grace. He was a thief. He was doing it for us." Grace cried. "He was doing it so we could be together." David stared at Grace in disbelief. "So you knew," he said. "You knew Marcus was stealing money, and you were okay with it." Grace's face turned even redder. "We deserved that money," she said. "We deserve to be happy." "You deserve to be happy?" David repeated. His voice was getting louder now. "What about me, Grace? What about Sarah, Marcus's wife? Did we not deserve to be happy?" Grace looked away. "You don't understand," she muttered. "You're right," David said. "I don't understand. I don't understand how the woman I loved could turn into someone I don't even recognize. I don't understand how you could lie to me for months. I don't understand how you could plan to run away with a married man who was stealing money. You're right, Grace. I don't understand any of it." Tears started rolling down Grace's cheeks. "I loved him," she whispered. "No," David said. "You loved the idea of him. You loved the excitement and the secrets. But you didn't really love Marcus. If you did, you wouldn't have let him steal for you." Grace covered her face with her hands and sobbed. David watched her for a moment. Part of him wanted to comfort her like he used to, but that part was very small now. "I'm filing for divorce," David said. "My lawyer will contact you next week. I want you to sign the papers without fighting. If you do, I won't tell everyone what you did. I won't tell your family that you were planning to run away with a thief. I won't tell your boss at the school. Your secret will stay between us." Grace looked up at him with red, puffy eyes. "You do that for me?" she asked. "Even after everything?" "I'm not doing it for you," David said. "I'm doing it for myself. I want to move on with my life. And I can't do that if I'm constantly thinking about revenge." David turned to walk back to his car, but Grace called out to him. "David, wait," she said. He stopped and turned around. "I'm sorry," Grace said. Her voice was soft and broken. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you." David looked at Grace one last time. The woman he had married 7 years ago. The woman who had promised to love him forever. The woman who had broken that promise. "I know you're sorry," David said. "But sorry doesn't fix what you broke." Then he got in his car and drove away. This time he didn't look back in the rearview mirror. Moving forward. That night, David sat in his house alone. It was quiet, but the silence didn't bother him anymore. He made himself dinner and ate while watching TV. His phone rang. It was Sarah. "Hi," David said when he answered. "Hi," Sarah said. "How are you doing?" "I'm okay," David said, and he meant it. "How about you?" "I'm okay too," Sarah said. "Marcus called me from jail. He begged me to bail him out. I said no." "Good," David said. "His company is pressing charges," Sarah continued. "The lawyer said he could go to prison for 5 years. Maybe more." 5 years, David thought. That seemed like a long time. But maybe it was exactly what Marcus needed. I'm filing for divorce too, Sarah said. I can't stay married to him after this. I deserve better. Yes, you do, David agreed. There was a pause. Then Sarah said something that surprised David. Thank you, she said. Thank you for helping me. I don't know what I would have done without you. You're a good person, David. David felt warmth in his chest. It was the first time in weeks that someone had said something kind to him. You're a good person too, Sarah, David said. You deserve to be happy. So do you, Sarah said. They talked for a few more minutes before saying goodbye. When David hung up, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. 1 week later. 1 week passed. David's lawyer sent the divorce papers to Grace. She signed them without fighting, just like David asked. David heard through friends that Marcus had pleaded guilty to his crimes. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Grace had gone to visit him once, but Marcus refused to see her. Even he blamed Grace for what happened. David also heard that Grace had quit her job at the school. She was too ashamed to face her co-workers after rumors started spreading. She moved to another city to live with her aunt. David didn't care where she went. She was out of his life now. Sarah started divorce proceedings too. She told David that she was planning to sell the house she shared with Marcus and move somewhere new, somewhere she could start fresh. What about you? Sarah asked David one day when they met for coffee. What are you going to do? David thought about it. What was he going to do? For so long, his whole life had been about Grace. His work, his home, his future. Everything was connected to her. But now she was gone. Now David had to figure out who he was without her. I don't know yet, David admitted. But I'm going to figure it out. Sarah smiled. I think you will, she said. A strange phone call. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. David was at home watching a movie when his phone rang. He looked at the screen and saw it was an unknown number again. His heart started beating faster. The last time he answered an unknown number, it was Sarah telling him about Marcus. What surprise was waiting for him this time? David answered the phone. Hello, David? A man's voice said. The voice sounded familiar, but David couldn't place it. Yes, David said. Who is this? It's Mr. Patterson, the voice said. From Patterson Investments. I'm Marcus's boss. David sat up straight. Why was Marcus's boss calling him? Hello, Mr. Patterson, David said. How can I help you? I wanted to thank you, Mr. Patterson said. Sarah told me that you were the one who helped her gather evidence against Marcus. Because of you, we were able to recover most of the stolen money. You saved our company. Oh, David said. He didn't know what else to say. I also wanted to talk to you about something else, Mr. Patterson continued. Sarah mentioned that you work at a phone shop. Is that correct? Yes, David said. I sell phones and computers. Have you ever thought about working in a different field? Mr. Patterson asked. Something with more opportunity for growth? David was confused. I don't know, he said. I've never really thought about it. My company is looking for someone to work in our security department, Mr. Patterson said. Someone who pays attention to details. Someone honest and trustworthy. After what you did to help catch Marcus, I think you'd be perfect for the job. Pays much better than retail work. Are you interested? David couldn't believe what he was hearing. Was Marcus's boss offering him a job? Yes, David said. Yes, I'm very interested. Wonderful, Mr. Patterson said. Come to my office on Monday morning and we'll discuss the details. I'll send you the address. Thank you, David said. Thank you so much. When David hung up, he sat on his couch in shock. A new job, a better job, a chance to start over. Maybe David thought losing Grace wasn't the end of his life. Maybe it was the beginning of something better. The twist. But David's happiness didn't last long. The next day, David got another phone call. This time it was from Sarah, and she sounded upset. David, we have a problem, Sarah said. Her voice was shaking. What's wrong? David asked. Fear crept into his chest. I just got a call from Marcus's lawyer, Sarah said. Marcus is saying that he wasn't working alone. He's saying that someone else helped him steal the money. And he's claiming that person is you. David felt like the room was spinning. What? He said. That's crazy. I didn't help him steal anything. I know, Sarah said. But Marcus says he has proof. He says there are emails between you and him discussing the theft. He's trying to make a deal with the prosecutors. He'll give them evidence against you if they reduce his sentence. David couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. But I never sent Marcus any emails, David said. I don't even have his email address. I believe you, Sarah said. But somehow there are emails that look like they came from your email address. Marcus must have faked them. David's mind was racing. How could Marcus fake emails from his address? And why would he do this? Then David realized something. Marcus was getting revenge. David had ruined Marcus's plan to run away with Grace. David had gotten Marcus arrested. Now Marcus wanted to drag David down with him. What do I do? David asked Sarah. His voice was panicked. You need to get a lawyer, Sarah said. A good one, and you need to do it fast. The police might come to question you soon. David hung up the phone. His hands were shaking. His whole body felt cold. He had tried to do the right thing. He had tried to stop Marcus and Grace from getting away with their crimes. But now, somehow, David was the one in trouble. How had everything gone so wrong? Just when David thought his nightmare was over, it was only getting worse. Marcus's lies could send David to prison for a crime he didn't commit. And as David would soon discover, Marcus wasn't the only one telling lies. Someone else had been working in the shadows this whole time. Someone David trusted. And when David found out the truth about who really betrayed him, it would shake him to his core. Remember to subscribe to this channel to support our growth. The lawyer's office. David sat in a small office with gray walls and no windows. Across from him sat a lawyer named Mr. Williams, a short man with glasses and a tired face. David had spent his last bit of savings to hire him. Tell me everything from the beginning, Mr. Williams said, opening his notebook. David took a deep breath and told his story. He told Mr. Williams about Grace cheating on him with Marcus. He told him about meeting Sarah and discovering Marcus's plan to steal money. He told him about calling the police and getting Marcus arrested. And now Marcus is saying I helped him steal the money? Mr. Williams asked. Yes, David said. But I didn't. I've never even met Marcus before I caught him with my wife. I don't know anything about his company or his accounts. How could I have helped him? Mr. Williams wrote notes in his book. The prosecutor sent me copies of the emails Marcus claims you sent him, he said. Let me show you. He turned his computer screen toward David. David looked at the emails and felt sick. They looked real. They had his email address at the top. They talked about moving money and hiding evidence. But David had never written these emails. These are fake, David said. Someone made these to look like they came from me. That's what I thought too, Mr. Williams said. So I hired a computer expert to look at them. And he found something interesting. These emails were sent from your email address, but not from your computer. They were sent from a different computer in a different location. Someone had access to your email password. David's mind was racing. Who had his email password? He used the same password for everything. His phone, his computer, his email. It was a simple password, his birthday. Then David remembered something that made his blood run cold. Grace knew his password. She had always known it. In fact, David had written it down on a piece of paper and kept it in his desk drawer at home. Grace could have easily found it. I think my wife did this, David said quietly. I think Grace sent those emails to frame me. Mr. Williams looked up from his notes. Why would she do that? Revenge, David said. I ruined her plan to run away with Marcus. I got Marcus arrested. Now she wants to destroy me. Mr. Williams nodded slowly. That makes sense, he said. But we need proof. Can you prove that Grace had access to your password? David thought hard. The paper with my password written on it should still be in my desk, he said. Grace's fingerprints would be on it. And my computer at home might have a record of someone logging into my email from there. Good, Mr. Williams said. We'll need to get that evidence. But there's something else we need to talk about. The prosecutor is offering you a deal. David's heart sank. A deal? If you plead guilty to helping Marcus steal the money, they'll only give you 2 years in prison instead of 7, Mr. Williams said. They say it's a generous offer. But I didn't do anything, David shouted. He stood up from his chair. Why would I go to prison for a crime I didn't commit? Because going to trial is risky, Mr. Williams said calmly. If the jury believes those fake emails, you could get 7 years. Maybe more. 2 years is better than 7-inch. David felt like the walls were closing in on him. 2 years in prison. 2 years away from his life, his job, his freedom. All because Grace wanted revenge. No, David said firmly. I'm not taking the deal. I'm innocent, and I'm going to prove it. Mr. Williams sighed. Okay, he said. Then we have a lot of work to do. That afternoon, David went home with Mr. Williams and a police officer. They needed to collect evidence from David's house. David opened his desk drawer. The piece of paper with his password was still there. Mr. Williams carefully put it in a plastic bag so they could test it for fingerprints later. Next, they looked at David's home computer. The computer expert Mr. Williams had hired came to check it. After an hour of typing and clicking, the expert turned to David. Someone logged into your email from this computer 3 weeks ago, the expert said. Based on the timestamp, it was on a Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Were you home at that time? David thought back. 3 weeks ago was before he confronted Grace at the beach house. He was still living with her then. No, David said. I was at work. I'm always at work on Tuesday afternoons. But Grace was home. She didn't have classes on Tuesdays. Perfect, Mr. Williams said. That helps our case. If we can prove Grace was the only one home when those emails were sent, the prosecutor will have a hard time saying you wrote them. But David knew they needed more than that. They needed to prove Grace had a reason to frame him. They needed to show that she was angry and wanted revenge. I have an idea, David said. I need to talk to Sarah. Sarah's revelation. David met Sarah at the same coffee shop where they had first talked. Sarah looked worried when she saw him. I heard about what Marcus is doing to you, Sarah said. I'm so sorry, David. This is all my fault. It's not your fault, David said. But I need your help. Did Marcus ever mention Grace trying to contact him after he was arrested? Sarah thought for a moment. Yes, she said. Marcus called me from jail a few days ago. He was angry because Grace kept calling and visiting him. He said she was begging him to lie for her. She wanted him to tell the police that you were involved in the theft so that she wouldn't look bad. Marcus said no at first. But then what? David asked. Sarah looked down at her coffee. Grace offered Marcus money, she said quietly. A lot of money. She said if he blamed you for the theft, she would pay for his lawyer. A really expensive lawyer who could get his sentence reduced. Marcus agreed because he was desperate. David felt anger boiling in his chest. So this was all planned. Grace had paid Marcus to lie about David. She had framed him. Did Marcus tell you where Grace got the money? David asked. He said Grace sold some jewelry, Sarah said. Expensive jewelry that you had bought her over the years. She sold it all and gave the money to Marcus's lawyer. David remembered the jewelry. He had bought Grace a diamond necklace for their 3rd anniversary. A gold bracelet for her birthday 2 years ago. Earrings for Christmas last year. All of it was worth thousands of dollars. And Grace had sold it all just to destroy him. I need you to tell this to my lawyer, David said to Sarah. Your testimony could save me. Sarah nodded. I'll do whatever it takes to help you, she said. You don't deserve this. The confrontation. But David wasn't satisfied with just telling his lawyer. He needed to confront Grace himself. He needed to hear her admit what she had done. Against Mr. Williams's advice, David drove to the house where Grace was staying with her mother. He knocked on the door hard, making it shake. Grace's mother answered. She looked surprised to see David. "David?" she said. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to Grace," David said. "Now." Grace's mother looked nervous. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said. "Grace is very upset right now." "I don't care if she's upset," David said, his voice getting louder. "She tried to send me to prison. She needs to face me." Grace appeared behind her mother. She looked different. Her hair was messy, and she had dark circles under her eyes. But her eyes were also hard and cold. "What do you want, David?" Grace asked. "I want you to tell me the truth," David said. "Did you frame me? Did you send those fake emails from my account?" Grace's mother looked confused. "What emails?" she asked. But Grace didn't answer. She just stared at David with those cold eyes. "You ruined my life," Grace finally said. "You got Marcus arrested. You took away my chance to be happy. So yes, I did it. I sent those emails. I framed you. And I don't regret it." Grace's mother gasped. "Grace," she said, "what have you done?" "He deserves it," Grace screamed. She was crying now, but they were angry tears. "He destroyed everything. Marcus and I were going to have a new life together. We were going to be happy. And David took it all away from us." David pulled out his phone. He had been recording the entire conversation. "Thank you for that confession," David said calmly. "My lawyer will be very interested to hear it." Grace's face went pale. She realized what she had just done. "You were recording me?" she whispered. "Yes," David said. "Just like you betrayed me, I had to be smart. I knew you wouldn't be able to keep quiet. I knew your anger would make you confess." Grace lunged at David, trying to grab his phone. But David stepped back quickly. "Stay away from me," David said, "or I'll call the police right now. You've already committed enough crimes, Grace. Filing a false police report, fraud, conspiracy. Do you want to add assault to that list?" Grace stopped moving. She fell to her knees and started sobbing. Grace's mother looked at David with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I didn't know Grace had become this person. I didn't raise her to be like this." "I know," David said gently. "This isn't your fault." He turned and walked back to his car. Behind him, he could hear Grace crying and her mother trying to comfort her. But David felt nothing for Grace anymore. Not love, not hate, not even pity. He just felt relieved that the truth was finally out. The charges are dropped. The next day, David brought the recording to Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams listened to it twice, then smiled. "This is perfect," Mr. Williams said. "This is exactly what we needed. I'll send this to the prosecutor immediately." 2 hours later, Mr. Williams called David with good news. "The charges against you have been dropped," Mr. Williams said. "The prosecutor listened to the recording and realized you were telling the truth. They're now investigating Grace for filing false statements and obstruction of justice." David felt like a huge weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He wasn't going to prison. He was free. "What's going to happen to Grace?" David asked. "She'll probably be arrested," Mr. Williams said. "Filing false police reports is a serious crime. She could get up to 3 years in prison. Plus, Marcus's lawyer dropped him as a client once they found out about the fraud. So now Marcus has no lawyer, and his deal with the prosecutor fell apart. He'll probably get the full 7-year sentence." David didn't feel happy about that. He didn't want Grace to go to prison. Despite everything she had done, he had once loved her. Seeing her suffer didn't bring him any joy. "Is there any way Grace can avoid prison?" David asked. Mr. Williams was quiet for a moment. "Well," he said, "if you were willing to ask the prosecutor to be lenient with her, that might help. You're the victim in this case. Your opinion matters. But why would you want to help her after what she did to you?" David thought about it. "Because revenge doesn't fix anything," he said. "I learned that from this whole mess. Grace made terrible choices, but sending her to prison won't undo the pain she caused. It will just create more pain." "You're a better person than most people I know," Mr. Williams said. David's request. David met with the prosecutor, a stern woman named Ms. Rodriguez. She sat behind a big desk covered in papers and files. "I want to ask you to be lenient with Grace," David said. "I know what she did was wrong, but I don't want her to go to prison." Ms. Rodriguez looked surprised. "Mr. David," she said, "this woman tried to send you to prison for 7 years. She could have destroyed your entire life. And you want me to be lenient with her?" "Yes," David said. "I want her to face consequences, but not prison. Maybe community service or probation. She needs help, not punishment." Ms. Rodriguez studied David's face. "You really mean that?" she said. "I do," David said. Ms. Rodriguez sighed. "Okay," she said. "Because you're the victim and you're asking for mercy, I'll offer Grace a deal. If she pleads guilty to filing false statements, I'll recommend probation and 200 hours of community service instead of prison time. But she has to publicly apologize to you, and she can never contact you again." "That sounds fair," David said. Grace's apology. 2 weeks later, David stood in a courtroom. Grace was there with a public defender, a young lawyer who looked nervous. The judge, an old man with white hair, asked Grace to stand. "Ms. Grace," the judge said, "you have pleaded guilty to filing false police statements. Before I accept your plea and give you your sentence, the prosecutor has requested that you apologize to Mr. David. Do you have anything you'd like to say?" Grace turned to look at David. Her eyes were red from crying. She looked smaller somehow, like all the fight had gone out of her. "David," Grace said, her voice shaking, "I'm so sorry for what I did to you. I was angry and hurt, and I wanted to hurt you back. But that was wrong. You didn't deserve any of this. You were always good to me, and I betrayed you in the worst way possible. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know that I'm truly sorry, and I hope someday you can find happiness again." David looked at Grace. Part of him wanted to yell at her. Part of him wanted to tell her how much she had hurt him. But another part of him just wanted to move on. "I accept your apology," David said simply. The judge nodded. "Very well," he said. "Ms. Grace, you are sentenced to 3 years of probation and 200 hours of community service. You will also attend mandatory counseling sessions. And as part of your probation, you are forbidden from contacting Mr. David in any way. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Honor," Grace said quietly. "Court is adjourned," the judge said, hitting his gavel on the desk. David walked out of the courtroom. He didn't look back at Grace. That chapter of his life was finally closed. A new beginning. 3 months passed. David started his new job at Patterson Investments. He worked in the security department, helping to make sure nobody else could steal money like Marcus did. The work was interesting and David was good at it. Mr. Patterson even gave him a raise after just 2 months. David also stayed in touch with Sarah. Her divorce from Marcus was finalized. She sold her house and moved to a new apartment on the other side of the city. One Saturday, David and Sarah met for coffee. It had become their routine. Every Saturday morning, they would meet and talk about their week. "How are you doing?" Sarah asked. "I'm good," David said, and he meant it. For the first time in months, he actually felt good. "I'm proud of you," Sarah said. "After everything that happened, you could have become bitter and angry, but instead you chose to move forward. That takes real strength." "I learned something from all of this," David said. "Holding on to anger and wanting revenge doesn't make you feel better. It just makes you feel worse. The only way to heal is to let go." Sarah smiled. "That's very wise," she said. They talked for another hour about work, about their families, about their hopes for the future. When it was time to leave, Sarah stood up. "David," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course," David said. "Would you like to have dinner with me sometime?" Sarah asked. Her face turned a little red. "Not as friends, as something more." David was surprised. He hadn't thought about dating anyone. After everything with Grace, he wasn't sure he was ready. But when he looked at Sarah, he felt something warm in his chest. Sarah understood what he had been through. She had been through the same thing. Maybe they could help each other heal. "Yes," David said, smiling. "I'd like that very much." Sarah's face lit up. "Really?" she said. Really? David said. 6 months later, David and Sarah had dinner that night, and the night after that, and many nights after that. Slowly, carefully, they built something new together. They didn't rush. They both knew what it felt like to have love turn into pain. So they took their time. David learned that Sarah loved painting. She showed him her artwork, beautiful pictures of sunsets and oceans. David learned that Sarah was funny and kind. She made him laugh in ways he hadn't laughed in years. Sarah learned that David was patient and thoughtful. He listened when she talked about her pain from Marcus's betrayal. He never judged her or made her feel bad about what had happened. One evening, 6 months after their first dinner together, David and Sarah sat on a bench watching the sunset. The sky was orange and pink, and the air was warm. "I'm happy," Sarah said suddenly. "For the first time in years, I'm actually happy." David took her hand. "Me too," he said. "Do you ever think about Grace?" Sarah asked. "Sometimes," David admitted. "I wonder how she's doing. I hope she's getting the help she needs." "Do you miss her?" Sarah asked. David thought about it. "I miss who I thought she was," he said. "But I don't miss who she actually turned out to be. Does that make sense?" "Perfect sense," Sarah said. "I feel the same way about Marcus." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Sarah said, "David, can I tell you something?" "Anything," David said. "I'm falling in love with you," Sarah said. She looked nervous, like she was afraid of what David might say. David's heart started beating faster. He looked at Sarah, her kind eyes, her gentle smile, her brave heart, and he realized something. "I'm falling in love with you too," David said. Sarah's eyes filled with happy tears. David leaned in and kissed her softly. Felt right. Felt like healing. The truth about Grace. But David's story wasn't quite finished. 1 month later, David got a phone call from Grace's mother. "Hello, David," she said. "I hope I'm not bothering you." "It's okay," David said. "Is everything all right?" "I wanted to let you know about Grace," her mother said. "She's been doing much better. The counseling has really helped her. She got a job at a small bookstore, and she's been volunteering at a shelter for abused women. She asked me to tell you that she's working hard to become a better person. She wanted you to know that your mercy changed her life. If you had pushed for her to go to prison, she thinks she would have given up on herself. But because you showed her kindness, even after everything she did, she realized that she could change." David felt emotional hearing this. "Thank you for telling me," he said. "She also wanted me to tell you that she's happy you found someone new," Grace's mother said. "She saw pictures of you and Sarah online. She said you both deserve to be happy." When David hung up the phone, he felt a sense of peace. Grace was going to be okay, and so was he. 1 year after catching Grace cheating on her birthday, David stood in a different place. He was standing at the beach. Not the beach where he had confronted Grace and Marcus. A different beach. A new beach. Sarah stood next to him, holding his hand. They had come here to watch the sunset together. "It's beautiful," Sarah said. "Yes, it is," David agreed. David thought about everything that had happened over the past year. The betrayal, the pain, the anger, the healing. It had been the hardest year of his life. But it had also taught him important lessons. He learned that people can surprise you, sometimes in terrible ways, but sometimes in wonderful ways. He learned that holding on to anger only hurts yourself. He learned that showing mercy can change lives. And most importantly, he learned that endings can become new beginnings. "David," Sarah said, interrupting his thoughts. "Yes," David said. "Thank you," Sarah said. "For what?" David asked. "For being brave enough to love again," Sarah said. "After what Grace did to you, you could have closed your heart forever. But you didn't. You chose to trust me. You chose to give love another chance. That takes real courage." David pulled Sarah close. "You gave love another chance too," he said. "We healed together." As they watched the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, David felt grateful. Grateful for the pain that had taught him to appreciate true love. Grateful for Sarah, who had shown him that broken hearts can heal. and grateful for the chance to start over. He caught his wife cheating on her birthday. But what happened next shocked everyone, including himself. Because instead of letting betrayal destroy him, David found something better. He found himself. He found healing. And he found real love. And that was the most shocking part of all. Remember to subscribe to this channel to support our growth. 2 years had passed since David caught Grace cheating on her birthday. Life had moved forward in ways David never expected. David was now a senior security analyst at Patterson Investments. He had been promoted twice and was earning more money than he ever thought possible. His job was to protect the company from people like Marcus, thieves who tried to steal from honest people. Sarah had opened her own art gallery in the city. Her paintings were selling well, and she was finally living her dream. Every morning, David would wake up next to Sarah in the apartment they shared. Every morning, he felt grateful for the second chance life had given him. But today was different. Today, David got a phone call that would change everything once again. The phone call. David was at work when his phone rang. It was a number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't answer it. But something told him to pick up. "Hello," David said. "Is this David?" a man's voice asked. The voice sounded old and tired. "Yes," David said. "Who is this?" "My name is Detective Thompson," the man said. "I'm calling from the police department. I need to talk to you about your ex-wife, Grace." David's heart started beating faster. He hadn't heard Grace's name in over a year. After she finished her probation and community service, Grace had moved to a different state. David had heard she was doing well, working at a bookstore and living a quiet life. "What about Grace?" David asked. "Is she in trouble?" "No," Detective Thompson said. "She's not in trouble. She's dead, David. Grace died 3 days ago." David felt like all the air had been sucked out of his lungs. Dead? Grace was dead? How? David whispered. "How did she die?" "Car accident," Detective Thompson said. "A drunk driver hit her car on the highway. She died instantly." "I'm very sorry for your loss." David sat down in his chair. His hands were shaking. Grace was gone. The woman he had once loved was gone. "Why are you calling me?" David asked. "We've been divorced for 2 years." "Because Grace left something for you," Detective Thompson said. "A letter. She kept it with her important documents. It's addressed to you, and it says, to be opened only after my death. I think you should come to the station and read it." The letter. That afternoon, David drove to the police station. His mind was full of questions. What could Grace have written in that letter? Detective Thompson was waiting for him. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He handed David a white envelope. "Take your time," Detective Thompson said. "You can read it in the private room over there." David went into the small room and sat down. He stared at the envelope for a long time. Part of him didn't want to open it. Part of him was afraid of what he might find inside. But he had to know. David opened the envelope and pulled out several pages of handwritten words. He recognized Grace's handwriting immediately. He took a deep breath and began to read. "Dear David, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. I don't know when or how I'll die, but I wanted to make sure you knew the truth before I left this world. I've spent the last 2 years thinking about what I did to you. Every single day I think about how I hurt you, how I betrayed you, how I tried to destroy you. The counseling helped me understand why I did what I did. I was unhappy, David. Not because of you, you were always good to me. I was unhappy because of me. I felt like my life was small and boring. I felt like I was trapped. When I met Marcus, he made me feel special. He made me feel alive. I know that sounds stupid now. I know that what I did was wrong. But at the time, I convinced myself that I deserved to be happy. I convinced myself that leaving you was the right thing to do. But I was wrong. You were my happiness, David. You were my home. And I threw it all away for a fantasy. I want you to know something. Something I never told anyone. The reason I tried to frame you, the reason I sent those fake emails and paid Marcus to lie, it wasn't just about revenge. It was about guilt. I felt so guilty about what I had done to you that I couldn't face it. I couldn't accept that I was the bad person in our story. So I tried to make you look bad too. I tried to convince myself that you deserved what happened, that you were boring and neglectful, and that's why I cheated. But none of that was true. You were perfect, David, and I ruined everything. When the judge sentenced me to probation instead of prison, I was shocked. I deserved prison. I deserved to suffer for what I did. But you asked for mercy. You showed me kindness even after I tried to destroy you. That kindness saved my life, David. It made me realize that I could change, that I didn't have to be the terrible person I had become. So I went to counseling. I worked hard to understand myself. And slowly, I became someone better. I moved to another state and started over. I got a job at a bookstore. I volunteered at a shelter for women who had been abused. I tried to help other people avoid the mistakes I made. And David, I want you to know something important. I found peace. For the first time in my life, I found real peace. Not the fake happiness I felt with Marcus. Not the comfortable but empty life I had with you. But real, genuine peace with myself. I never tried to contact you because I knew you had moved on. I heard through friends that you were dating Sarah. I was happy for you. You deserve someone who will treat you right. Someone who won't betray you. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to remember me kindly. But I wanted you to know that your mercy changed my life. You could have destroyed me, but instead you saved me. Thank you, David. Thank you for being the man you are. Thank you for showing me that good people really do exist. I hope you have a beautiful life. I hope you and Sarah are happy together. And I hope that someday, when you think of me, you'll remember the good times we had before I ruined everything. With love and deep regret, Grace. David finished reading the letter. Tears were rolling down his face. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected Grace to take responsibility for what she did. He hadn't expected her to understand how much she had hurt him. And he hadn't expected to feel sad about her death. For so long, David had thought of Grace as the villain in his story. The woman who betrayed him. The woman who tried to destroy him. But reading this letter, he realized that Grace was just a person. A flawed, broken person who made terrible mistakes. But also a person who had tried to change. David folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. He walked out of the private room. Detective Thompson looked at him. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Yes," David said. "I'm okay." Grace's funeral. 3 days later, David stood at Grace's funeral. It was a small ceremony. Just Grace's mother, a few friends from her bookstore, and some women from the shelter where she volunteered. Sarah had come with David. She held his hand as the priest talked about Grace's life. "Grace made mistakes," the priest said, "but she spent the last years of her life trying to make up for those mistakes. She helped many women at the shelter. She was kind and patient with everyone she met. She had finally found peace." After the ceremony, Grace's mother came up to David. She hugged him tightly. "Thank you for coming," she said. Her eyes were red from crying. "Grace would have been happy to know you were here." "I'm sorry for your loss," David said. And he meant it. Grace's mother pulled back and looked at David. "Did you read her letter?" she asked. "Yes," David said. "She wrote it a year ago," Grace's mother said. "She told me that she wanted you to know the truth. She said you deserved that much." "She changed," David said. "I could tell from the letter. She really changed." "She did," Grace's mother said. "You changed her, David. Your kindness showed her that people could be better than their worst moments. Thank you for that." The conversation with Sarah. That night, David and Sarah sat on their couch. David had been quiet all evening. Sarah knew he was thinking about Grace. "How are you feeling?" Sarah asked softly. David thought about it. "Sad," he said, "but also grateful." "Grateful?" Sarah asked. "Grace's letter made me realize something," David said. "When she cheated on me, I thought my life was over. I thought I would never be happy again. But losing Grace led me to you. It led me to this life we have together. So even though what Grace did was terrible, something good came out of it." Sarah squeezed David's hand. "That's a beautiful way to look at it," she said. Grace also changed, David continued. She became a better person. My mercy helped her do that. So maybe her death wasn't meaningless. Maybe she helped other people during the time she had left. Maybe she made a difference. I'm sure she did, Sarah said. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Sarah said something that surprised David. I want to marry you, she said. David turned to look at her. What? I want to marry you, David, Sarah said again. Her eyes were serious. Life is short. Grace's death reminded me of that. We never know how much time we have. And I don't want to waste another day without being your wife. David felt warmth spreading through his chest. Are you proposing to me? He asked with a small smile. Yes, Sarah said. I'm proposing to you. David, will you marry me? David didn't have to think about it. Yes, he said. Yes, I'll marry you. Sarah's face lit up with joy. She kissed David deeply. And in that moment, David realized that he had finally healed. The pain from Grace's betrayal was gone. The anger was gone. All that was left was love. 1 year later, 1 year after Grace's death, David and Sarah got married. It was a beautiful ceremony on the beach. The same beach where they had watched the sunset together when they first fell in love. David's friend James was his best man. Sarah's sister was her maid of honor. Grace's mother was there too. She had stayed in touch with David and Sarah over the past year. She said it made her feel close to Grace. As David and Sarah exchanged vows, David thought about his journey. He thought about catching Grace cheating on her birthday. He thought about the pain and anger he had felt. He thought about meeting Sarah and falling in love again. He thought about Grace's letter and her death. And he realized that everything had happened for a reason. If Grace hadn't cheated on him, he never would have met Sarah. If Marcus hadn't tried to frame him, he never would have learned to forgive. If Grace hadn't died, he never would have understood that people can change. Every painful moment had led him to this perfect day, to this perfect woman, to this perfect life. I love you, David whispered to Sarah as they kissed. I love you too, Sarah whispered back. The final revelation. 6 months after the wedding, David got one more surprise. He was cleaning out old boxes in the garage when he found something strange. It was a small notebook hidden under some old papers. The notebook had Grace's name on it. David opened it carefully. Inside were pages and pages of Grace's handwriting. It was a journal. David almost put it away. He didn't want to invade Grace's privacy. But then he saw his name on one of the pages. Curiosity got the better of him. He started reading. The journal was from 2 years before Grace died. It was from the time when she was doing her probation and community service. January 15th. Today was my first day volunteering at the women's shelter. I met a woman named Lisa. She had been abused by her husband for 10 years. She finally found the courage to leave him. When I talked to Lisa, I realized something. I abused David. Not physically, but emotionally. I lied to him, cheated on him, and tried to destroy him. I was just as bad as Lisa's husband. That realization broke me. I went home and cried for hours. How could I have become such a terrible person? March 3rd. I've been seeing a therapist for 2 months now. She's helping me understand why I did what I did. She says I have narcissistic tendencies. I only thought about myself and my own happiness. I never considered how my actions would hurt others. She's teaching me empathy, how to think about other people's feelings. It's hard, but I'm trying. May 20th. I saw David today. Not in person, but in a photo online. He was at some work event. He looked happy. He was smiling. Seeing him happy made me cry. Not because I was jealous, but because I was grateful. Grateful that I didn't destroy him completely. Grateful that he was able to move on. I hope he stays happy forever. August 12th. I found out David is dating someone. A woman named Sarah. I looked her up online. She's beautiful and talented. She seems kind. Part of me feels sad. Sad that I lost him. Sad that I could have been the one making him happy. But mostly, I'm happy for him. He deserves someone good. Someone who will treat him right. I hope they get married. I hope they have children. I hope they grow old together. And I hope David forgets about me. He deserves to move on completely. David closed the journal. Tears were in his eyes. Grace had spent her last years thinking about him, wishing him happiness, hoping he would move on. And he had. David put the journal back in the box. He would keep it, but he wouldn't read it again. Grace's private thoughts should stay private. But knowing that Grace had genuinely changed gave David peace. It meant that his mercy hadn't been wasted. It meant that showing kindness to Grace had made a real difference. The end. 5 years after catching Grace cheating on her birthday, David stood on his back porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in beautiful colors. Sarah came outside and wrapped her arms around him from behind. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Everything," David said. "The past, the present, the future." "Any regrets?" Sarah asked. David thought about it. Did he regret marrying Grace? No, because that experience taught him what real love should look like. Did he regret showing Grace mercy? No, because that helped her change her life. "No regrets," David said. "Everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to." "I love you," Sarah said. "I love you too," David said. They stood together watching the sunset. And David realized that this was his happy ending. Not the one he had planned. Not the one he had expected. But the right one. He caught his wife cheating on her birthday. What happened next shocked everyone. But the most shocking part wasn't the betrayal or the revenge or the forgiveness. The most shocking part was that betrayal led to blessing. That pain led to growth. That endings led to new beginnings. And that sometimes the worst thing that ever happens to you can become the best thing that ever happened to you. David had lost Grace. But he had found himself. He had found forgiveness. He had found real love. And he had found peace. And that was the greatest gift of all. The end. Thank you for following David's journey from heartbreak to healing. His story reminds us that even in our darkest moments, there is hope for a brighter tomorrow. Life may not always go as planned, but sometimes the unexpected path leads us exactly where we need to be. Remember to subscribe to this channel to support our growth. Drop a comment below and let us know what you think of David's story. Did his journey inspire you? Share your thoughts.